You know, sometimes the most incredible stories are the ones you'd never expect. This is one of them. He went to Japan to get revenge, but he ended up dedicating his entire life to peace. We're going to dive into the truly remarkable story of Bob Boardman, a U.S. Marine who became a peacemaker in the most unlikely of places.
So, take a look at this. This is Bob Boardman in his later years. And this room, well, it's not just a basement study. It's more like a living museum of a transformed life. You can almost feel the history in here, can't you? It's this powerful mix of his past as a Marine and his future as a friend to the very people he once called his enemy.
So that begs the question, right? How in the world does something like that happen? How does a man who fought the Japanese with everything he had become their lifelong friend? It's this incredible journey of transformation that, honestly, it really makes you stop and think about what forgiveness even means.
Okay, so let's get into it. Our story starts with this Marine's unlikely mission, and believe it or not, it didn't start with a call for peace. Nope, it started with a single powerful word: revenge.
So picture this. It's right after Pearl Harbor, and a 17-year-old Bob Boardman joins the Marines. He said he was looking for action, excitement, and revenge. But his mission for revenge, well, it took a pretty sharp turn in Australia. A drunken brawl, a punched-out window, a severed tendon, and suddenly he's laid up in a military hospital. And it was right there in that quiet moment when he was forced to just think that he came across this principle of sowing and reaping. It's also where he read the New Testament for the very first time. And that one act, it would change everything.
But, changing your life isn't like flipping a switch. It wasn't easy. He had this habit of blasphemy that he just couldn't seem to break. So he went to a chaplain, a guy named Art Glasser, who gave him this piece of practical, totally life-altering advice. He said, next time you want to curse, just pray the Lord's Prayer instead. And that simple swap, that was the key. It was what helped him finally start to line up his actions with his new faith.
Okay, so Bob's personal transformation is in full swing. But his story is about to get even more interesting because his journey is about to cross paths with someone else's. And together, they're going to head down a totally unexpected road right back to Japan.
After the war, Bob ends up at this place called 509. It was the home of Dawson Trotman, the founder of the Navigators, and it was always buzzing with activity. Bob was kind of the resident jack of all trades, and it's right there, in the middle of all that hustle and bustle, that he meets Gene Keith. I mean, this house wasn't just a place to live. It was really the crucible where their shared faith and their entire future would be formed.
So then the call comes. Go to Japan as a missionary. And for Bob, this was complicated. He said, I didn't hate the Japanese, but I just didn't want to see them again. It was unreasonable. You can imagine him really wrestling with it. I mean, how could his former enemies ever accept him? But for Jean, whoa, it was a totally different story. For her, the call was crystal clear. She said it was Japan, Japan, Japan. So you have these two very different starting points, but their paths were coming together to build this partnership that would take on this huge challenge.
And just like that, together, they set off on a completely new kind of mission. This wasn't about military strategy anymore. This was about sowing seeds of friendship in a country that was just starting to heal from war. This photo really helps put things in perspective. You can see the bigger picture of their mission here. That's Bob in the back row, right in the center. He's with Roy Robertson, another pioneer with the Navigators, and the founder Dawson Trotman. So yeah, they were part of this larger movement, for sure. But the real impact they were going to have, that was going to come from a really personal, one-on-one approach.
Man, those first few years in Okinawa were tough. I'm talking no running water, no refrigerator, and a constant fight against rats and rust, just primitive conditions. But in the middle of all that hardship, they discovered this incredible spiritual hunger among the people. They started teaching English and the gospel in the village schools. And for Bob, wow, what a powerful, full-circle moment. He was going back to the exact area where he'd been wounded in the war, but this time, he said, he was returning with different weapons.
Their whole strategy, their entire approach, it really boiled down to one powerful idea. And Bob said it best himself. He understood that in a culture where people can feel really isolated, even when they're in a massive crowd, genuine friendship was the absolute key. This wasn't some big program. It was just about coming alongside people and becoming a true friend. And this is so important, right? This is why it matters. It's basically a blueprint for how one person's actions can start to heal these deep, massive wounds between entire nations. That idea, that was the foundation for everything they did.
And that philosophy of friendship, well, it started to create a legacy that just multiplied over time. They began this long, very patient process of raising up local Japanese leaders who could carry the work forward themselves.
And I mean it when I say it was a slow, patient process. For 13 long years, they just poured themselves into building relationships. Then in 1966, something amazing happened. After this period of really intense prayer from Christians all over the world, something just shifted. A whole new generation of young, teachable Japanese leaders started to step up, totally ready to take the reins. Can you imagine leaving after 32 years? Saying goodbye was not easy. Bob himself said he didn't think he could leave with dry eyes. But this one verse gave him the strength he needed. Just seeing his spiritual children, as he called them, ready to lead, he said there was no greater joy. And that's what gave him the peace to finally say sayonara.
And that brings us to the final chapter of his story. Because for Bob, this was a lifelong mission. It continued long after he left Japan, and it proves that his calling was never really about one specific place.
So here we are, right back where we started, in Bob's study. I mean, just look around the room. You've got his military medals right next to Japanese art. This room is literally the physical embodiment of his life's work, reconciliation. And it was right here that he spent his final years, just reading, writing, and praying.
But his mission wasn't over, not by a long shot. It just changed locations. He actually became the chaplain for his old Marine Corps battalion. And as he saw the clock ticking down for that World War II generation, he poured himself into reaching his old buddies, sharing the very same hope that had so completely and radically transformed his own life. You know, the story of Bob and Jean Borden leaves us with a pretty powerful question, doesn't it? In a world that feels so defined by conflict all the time, what does it really take to turn an enemy into a friend? Their story seems to suggest that maybe, just maybe, it all starts with one person taking a single, courageous step of friendship.